Hey friends, it's Martin. We're in the studio today and we're making pizza Bianca. This is a classic Roman flatbread. It's got a nice yellow crumb, a long fermentation, tons of flavor packed in this, and much easier than you would think. Come along for the recipe. The link's right down there in the description. Some of you may be thinking that I'm going to make a pizza with white sauce on it, but that's not what this is. This is a classic Roman flatbread, often eaten plain or sometimes cut open and then eaten with something like mortadella and a soft cheese or something like that. So we're basically making this beautiful dimpled flatbread today. For the mix, I'm going to start in the bowl with the all-purpose flour and then I'm going to add some semolina. The all-purpose is giving us tenderness, the semolina is bringing a little bit of texture and also some beautiful color. So the rest of my dry ingredients into the bowl, a small amount of yeast. It's a very small amount of yeast because think about it, this dough is going to rise for a very long time, overnight, and so we don't need a lot of yeast, and then salt in there as well. A quick stir to combine just to get your dry ingredients distributed, and then I'll go in with my water. Now I'm just going to stir to combine. It's a very sticky dough. If you don't mix it and let it be a sticky dough, it won't be open after the bake. We want to have a nice bubbly open structure to it, and water is one of the tools, in addition to time and good fermentation, that's going to support that. Now this dough is going to sit and we're going to give it 2 folds over the course of a couple hours. You can leave it in the bowl and that's perfectly fine as long as you cover it, and then you could put the bowl into the fridge for the overnight. However, my preference is to put it in a container that's got a lid that comes with it. So a little drizzle of olive oil in the container, and then maybe I just make sure that it's on the sides because this dough is going to grow significantly, and we'll put it into my 2-quart container. I just want to take a second and show you how soft this dough is and how little strength it has. You know how we talk about like the window pane test? This is obviously the other end of that spectrum. An incredibly weak dough, a very wet dough. It has no elasticity and basically very little strength. But during time and folds and fermentation, it's going to gain a lot of strength. So cover it, set a 30-minute timer or so, and come back and we'll fold it. So the dough's had about 30 minutes, and as I always say, there's some flexibility there. It's just hanging out, doing what it loves, It's just growing, so don't fret too much if it's been longer than that or if it's been a little bit less than that. Before, when I tried to pull it and it just broke, now it's become something that's beautifully stretchy. And so I'm going to do this bowl fold. It's not in a bowl, but maybe we'll call it a container fold, whatever you want. I'm working my way around the outside of the dough, stretching and then pressing in the center to adhere. And I'm not really counting. I'm just going until the dough feels tensioned and feels like it sort of won't stretch as much anymore. And then once I get there, I just turn it over, seam side down into the bowl, and good to go. So now the dough can sit for 1 hour to 2 hours or so. Like I said, be flexible. Put a lid on it and put it in a comfortable spot. We'll come back and fold it one more time before we put it to sleep for the night. Okay, I'm back to this dough and I've given it the full 2 hours. I'm going to give it a bowl fold, stretching and pressing, making my way around the dough. And as always, once I feel that it's tensioned, I'm just going to turn it in the container, put it seam side down, put the lid on, and then I'm going to chill it for 12 to 24 hours. During that period, the dough is going to continue to rise, and in addition to rising, they're also developing tons of flavor. So 12 to 24 hours, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll make the pizza Bianca. So I'm working on a floured surface here. This dough is sticky, so when it comes out of this container, you want to have a decent amount of flour there waiting for you. We're in that phase of bread making, and you'll see me talk about this a lot with everything from baguettes to a lot of hearth breads, where we don't really want to be aggressive with it. We want to allow it to retain a certain amount of the structure that it's developed over that long period of rise. So I want 2 pieces that are basically even in size. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get them into a little bit of a rectangle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give them a letter fold. So 2/3 of the way down, and then just gently press to seal. This dough is so tacky on top that you're not going to need a lot of force from your hands. In fact, when you go to touch it, and I've said this before, just don't touch the sticky side, right? This dough has a sticky side and it also has a floured side. as long as I'm touching that floured side where the dough met the bench, it won't adhere to my hands, or it won't quickly adhere to my hands. So I've got my little letter fold begun, and I'm just going to finish it. And that's basically it. I've got a tube or a rectangular sort of situation. Let me do that one more time. Coming down and then going up. Okay. So now, these are going to rest for an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, a long time. And while they're resting, I want them to ride on a bed of semolina. Semolina is finely ground durum flour. Durum is wheat, and it's super, super yellow. And don't worry about going heavy on this. We're not going to waste anything that doesn't adhere to these loaves, and you'll see that in the shaping step. So I have my little rectangular sort of package. I'm going to turn it over so that the seam side is down, and I'm going to place it on my bed of semolina. Place it and give them some space in between, you know. These are going to rest for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Make sure you cover them. If you've got a lid, go ahead and get that on there. Sometimes you can use a plastic bag or another baking tray. Just make sure that they are not drying out as they sit for that long period of time. We'll come back in a little bit and stretch and bake these. Hey, you're rolling. Hello, folks. Hey out there. Hey, it's Martin. How are you? Nice to see you. Welcome back to the show. The oven's preheated. I have a baking stone in there. It's super hot. Looking at these, I can tell that we need a little bit of semolina on top. And so I'm going to add some. And you can be pretty generous here, you know, don't be shy. This dough is very soft, so I'm pretty generous with that. Now, I'm going to work with these one at a time, and I'm going to dimple with my fingers, pressing firmly into the dough, but not through the dough, okay? And you'll sort of see what happens here. We get these beautiful bubbles. The dough is strong. It's well proofed. And once I have that shape, now what I want to do is I'm going to pick it up, and I'm just going to gently elongate it a little bit. Some of that semolina is going to fall off, and then I move it over onto my parchment and just adjust it a little bit. I want it to be about 16 inches long, which is roughly the length of a piece of parchment, and about 5 inches or so wide. Okay, so one more time. With my fingers, I'm just going to go down the length of the dough, gently pressing into the dough, but not through the dough, okay? Into it, but not through it. And I get this beautiful bubbling. I'm gonna get my hand under here, and I'm working with my hand like a paddle, right? You're not gonna wanna use your fingertips here. If you use your fingertips, they might sort of poke through. It's okay if there's a little bit of extra semolina on top. I wanna have a nice regular shape. You don't have to. You could make it a little bit more rustic than that. So now I'm gonna put about a tablespoon of olive oil on each one of these doughs. I'm not going to measure it, I'm just going to drizzle it. So I'm just going down the piece of dough like that, and then I'll go for the second one here, just a little drizzle of olive oil. I'm going to put some coarse salt on top as well. I'm just using olive oil and salt, right? It's simple. This dough, this bread, this delicious thing leans into that simplicity. High quality flour, the beautiful color of the semolina, aromatic olive oil on top, and a little bit of salt. Trust me that it's enough. You know, when I was living in Italy after college for a little while, I had the chance to eat this exact bread in Rome over many days and many weeks. And what I always came back to, and it's really the lesson that I took from my time in Italy, was how the simple ingredients, when well combined, are enough. It's enough. I don't need to put cheese on this. You could, and yes, it'd be delicious. But trust me that this flavor will be perfect if we just eat it plain or if we decide to make a sandwich with it. So, enough talking. Let's get this into the oven. Hot, 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 hot. So when these come out, you don't want to slice into them right away. It's super tempting, and I mean, if no one's looking, go for it. That's fine. But if you let them cool a little bit, let them finish baking, I think that you'll find that they're crisper in the end. As soon as they're out though, I do go ahead and brush them with a little bit of olive oil. You know, I took these to a pretty full level of color. It's humid these days. In the summer, I bake darker. In the winter, I can afford to bake a little bit lighter while really chasing crispness, right? That's what I want. So it has that pan de cristal sort of open structure, which is what we want. A beautiful bread can be used a million different ways. This is pizza Bianca. So don't forget that our recipe is right down there in the description. Thanks for coming along. This is Martin and Tucker from the studio saying thanks for joining us. Get out there and make some pizza Bianca.